Thank you guys for tuning in and for your support. Please consider giving me a like and comment, or maybe even subscribe for more creepy content. It really helps out a lot. I try to give you guys better content each day, so your support really is very much appreciated. Alright, enough of that. Let's continue on to another story of the Balancers. Memoirs of a Balancer. Run. If you're just tuning into this series, I've left links to the other parts in the description. Feel free to catch up. Thank you for listening. Alright, first off, in case you're wondering about more information and detail as to locations, times, etc., sorry. Giving you that is a no-go. I only recently got approval for this little endeavor away from the standard. As I've said before, most balancers just keep a written journal. The conditions were simple. Be as vague as possible and change pertinent details so that we cannot be tracked down or tied to anything. Also, Duncan recently discovered my little memoirs and has taken it upon himself to inform everyone who will listen. Due to this, I've had a rash of people in the organization asking for a shout-out or for me to record stories for them about what they've done. So, here's to all the brave souls in the organization. Fuck you. These are my damn memoirs and I'll write what I damn well please. With that being said, this entry will go more into the Balancers as a group. Prior to the operation that I'm going to tell you about today, we were a fractured and non-cohesive unit. Don't get me wrong, we all got along decently, but we were prideful. We liked to handle missions on our own and with our own style. Prior to mine and Duncan's friendship, Balancers being close friends and working together on a regular basis was rare and almost unheard of. We worked as a single-man unit unless it was a situation that desperately required a second set of boots on the ground. This was just the way things were done, and in my opinion it severely limited our capabilities and overall power. I'm glad to say that this is no longer the case. Trust me, this was not a quick and painless process. Now, due to their constant nagging and endless threats to make accounts just to fuck with me, I will begrudgingly tell you about the operation that changed all of our views on this age-old tradition. This operation started out relatively mundane. Some days I wish it would have stayed that way. Close to a year after the Dybbuk debacle, and with myself closing in on 2 years of service, I was becoming confident in my abilities as a balancer, and was taking on bigger and badder operations. During this time, I only had a few run-ins with the rider, and it was usually under the most dire circumstances. A voice telling me to take a turn when I normally wouldn't have, and ended up getting me out of a tight spot, relatively unscathed. And another time where I dodged a truck without even knowing it was barreling in behind me. Now, Sam saw this as me growing into my role as a balancer, and becoming more in tune with the little voice in my head. We'll just let her keep believing that. Now, as a quick side note, all the balancers are recruited and chosen for this job due to a certain reason. We all have some tie or occurrence that has brought us close to the other side, and we are all a bit different. Now, I'll go more into detail about each of us later, but needless to say, we are all human, at least as human as we can be. But we are also different from the standard mold of a human. Now, this operation was a different one for me. It had to do with a cult. That wasn't odd, for the organization to want to keep tabs on these people and assess what they were capable of and what their endgame was. This cult was different, though. They popped up in the US almost overnight. They had been seen throughout Europe and Asia, but were disbanded or split apart relatively quickly. Here in the grand old US, they seemed to grab a foothold rather quickly. This concerned the organization as a whole, especially when they built a large compound and went to ground. These guys had been pretty open and transparent with our overseas counterparts, and were known devil worshippers. This didn't bother me. It may seem odd, but even with my line of work, I never held a belief in God or the devil. I knew that there were other entities bigger and more powerful than us on other planes of existence, but they didn't concern me because they never showed their face or made a big impact here. Now, as I said, they threw our game off when they showed up here, quickly began recruiting people, and went from your family-friendly and lamb-butchering neighborhood-style devil worshippers to a secretive and rapidly growing cult, seemingly overnight. My job was simple. Get dropped off a couple miles outside their compound, make my way there, observe closely for a few days, and if possible, do a little recreational breaking and entering so I could get an idea of what they were hiding behind those big-ass concrete walls. Now, this mission was like a lot more of my normal missions. So far, you've heard my more abnormal and rushed operations. I had a couple days to familiarize myself with all the info we had on these guys, study their layout and surrounding land, formulate a plan, and get my gear together properly. First things first, familiarize myself with the target. Now, that seems very in-depth, but it really wasn't. They were easy standard devil worshippers. Most members looked normal on the outside and held regular day-to-day jobs. Some were more influential, with the occasional doctor and mayor that we knew of. But they got freaky behind closed doors. Lots of orgies in the name of the devil, ritual animal sacrifice, and the occasional case of self-mutilation. These guys were even loosely linked to the deaths of a few unnamed vagrants, but nothing was ever definitely proven. Now came the harder part. Planning a spot to set up some overwatch on these guys where I could collect some valuable data. This included anything from eyes-on info to photos and even audio recordings where possible. Everything I got was normally transferred back to Command Central in real time while I was in the field. This was just in case I was compromised and had to ditch my gear in the field, or worse. Last, and most crucial, was my gear. Here's where things got fun for me, due to the severity and scope of this mission. I was allowed unrestricted access to the tech and weapons department, like a kid in a damn candy shop. Now, this is normal for more seasoned balancers, such as Duncan, who had a few more years on the job than me. But I was still relatively new and untested with bigger operations like this. I spent at least a full day selecting and tailoring my loadout. I really wanted to take everything that I could strap to my body, but Sam recommended that I leave myself a free hand in case I had to take a piss. Mrs. Buzz Killington herself, at work. I ended up with a professionally tailored carbon lattice battlesuit to start. These things are as badass as body armor comes. They form-fit like a comfortable and super flexible neoprene wetsuit, but they have the added benefit of being bulletproof, stab-proof, bite-proof, and they automatically react to outside temperatures to keep your body temperature comfortable. This may sound crazy, but thanks to an almost unlimited budget and access to some of the world's finest think tanks, I got all the awesome and shiny toys to play with. This suit was decked out with sewn-in hard armor, or all my soft bits. They were shock-proofed in case I had to get more up close and personal. The suit also had a built-in molly rigging around the chest, sides, and thighs for additions of pouches, holsters, and other goodies. And the best part was it felt like I was wearing nothing at all. Did I mention how fucking awesome these things are? Now came my more technical gear. I was sent out with a full high-resolution camera with a telephoto lens and built-in long-range audio recorder, so I could listen to these guys bumping uglies from the next town over. I also received my standard Glock 17 sidearm equipped with my own personal touches, in the form of a Tri-Icon RMR, extended slide release, oversized magazine release, and a precision salient arms barrel. It was my baby. And I was the fastest and most accurate draw in the organization thanks to hours of training. With that on my thigh and a camera on my side, it left room for my custom short-barreled 12-gauge Saiga shotgun. For those of you not familiar, this is a semi-automatic shotgun in an AK platform. This made it exceedingly simple to operate and maintain. Reliable and tough. There wasn't any heavy resistance expected, but if shit hit the fan, I was prepared to get out of there in one piece. My twin karambits were strapped to my shoulders and always ready for action. A few days later, armed to the teeth and ready for anything, I was inserted via Ghost Hawk Express, a stealth version of the venerable Black Hawk, in the countryside outside the palace of the Devil Worshippers. The trip to my Overwatch location was uneventful, save for a rumbling in my consciousness that I attributed to nerves. I made it safely to my Overwatch location and radioed in.
Cody in position. Affirmative.
I heard the reply from Sam. She was all business, and ready to go in the event of me needing her.
All units in position, and Operation Devil Buster is a go.
I heard one of the texts rattle off from somewhere beside Sam.
All units?
I queried, as I slid my camera out and began panning across what I found to be a heavily patrolled compound. This was odd, because I was informed of gate guards and nothing more.
Yeah, we have the other balancers on standby as a QRF in case you need them. During your trip there, we found increased guard activities and patrols.
She rattled this as if she was no doubt watching the compound and my position from an unseen eye in the sky.
Well, that is confirmed by what I'm seeing here, boss. Plan is still green, and we'll maintain Overwatch until night, then catch an up-close peek before I hightail it out of here.
The grumbling in my head became more pronounced, and I once again attributed it to nerves, especially due to these unforeseen elements. But hey, that's why I got paid the big bucks. Nothing was ever easy, and nothing ever went as planned.
Affirmative, Cody. Stay safe. Help is 20 minutes away if you need it, and all 4 other balancers are on deck there if you need them.
Now, this was odd to me because there were only 5 of us in the branch, with me here in the bushes and the other 4 on standby for QRF, Quick Reaction Force, or Pull My Ass Out of Trouble team if you prefer. That left no one at home base, and all 5 balancers in the field on the same operation? Odd. I spent the day taking photos and memorizing patrol patterns. It was monotonous and boring work. It yielded nothing, and by the time night pulled its heavy cloak over the land, I was itching to get up and have some fun. Stashing the camera away in the bushes, I pulled the last 2 goodies that I was given from a pouch on my chest. The first was a slimmed-down GoPro that strapped to my chest and a pair of night vision contacts that I slipped into my eyes. These things were a work of pure art. They had a carbon film that reacted to light levels and either amplified or enhanced any ambient light. I couldn't see in pure darkness, but they definitely enhanced my night vision and wouldn't blind me if the lights were suddenly flicked on.
Cody, moving in for a closer look. We'll need exfil in exactly 2 hours.
That left me with exactly 1 hour to navigate my way through this little ring of hell and an hour to haul ass to the location where I was dropped off.
Affirmative. QRF chopper is spinning up and ready to go if you need them. Whatever you say, Mom. These patrols are pretty well spaced and follow a consistent schedule. They're so sure of themselves that I haven't even seen an interior patrol.
I said as I closed the distance to the wall with my rifle in hand at a low ready.
Just because you don't see anything doesn't mean that it's not dangerous.
Now she was just berating me. Of course I knew she was saying it to keep my head in the game, but she saw everything that I did. These guys were just a bunch of well-funded fanatics with a dark taste. Fuck 'em. This was gonna be easy. I I stayed silent as I easily scaled the wall. Thanks to some hurried craftsmanship and some easily found handholds, I was up and over the wall before the patrol was even close to compromising me. As I landed on the other side, the voice in my head decided to make a reappearance.
Leave now. This is beyond your scope.
Simple enough, but fuck it. This thing hadn't really done much for me, and I still didn't fully trust it. Besides, I had a job to do. As I brushed it off and kept going, I felt a growing pressure in my head, especially as I closed in on their main building that I assumed was for worship. I wanted to relay back to Sam about what was going on inside my head, but decided to maintain noise discipline due to the fact that I didn't want to be discovered this deep in enemy territory. I crept up to a side door and slowly pulled it just enough to glance inside and give the camera an insider view. What I saw made me involuntarily tighten my grip on my rifle and hold my breath. There had to be close to 100 people standing silently in orderly rows. They were all staring at a man that was crucified on an upside-down cross at the very end of the building. There was never a report of this many people here, and no one had entered or left this building all day. How fucking long had these people been here, and how long were they going to stay? I thought.
Run! Now!
The voice bellowed in my head, causing me to cringe and the barrel of my rifle to bounce off the door. As one, the congregation looked at me with their horrible, horrible eyes. Their sewn-open eyes were leaking black tears as they stared at me. Oh, fuck! I thought as my blood ran cold. I bolted from the door at the same time as the nearest person came barreling at the door that I had recently vacated. They were like fucking termites coming out of every doorway, window, crack, and crevice in sight. They quickly blocked my way, moving like they were one giant organism. I could hear Sam screaming in my ear as she ordered an immediate evac by the QRF team and then resumed to calmly give me directions, thanks to her blessed eye in the sky.
Left, right, left, left, right, left, right, 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 straight, left.
I'll never forget these directions. They are non-changing and frequently get reburned into my memory thanks to frequent nightmares. They always land me in the same spot that I ended up that night, with my back against the main gates and my rifle thrust forward as I yelled warnings that I would kill any motherfucker that got too close. If I thought that the shit couldn't get any worse, I heard Sam say those fateful words.
QRF is 10 minutes out. Stay alive.
Those last two words shouted into my cranium triggered something in me. All my fear and anxiety faded, replaced by a single cold and relaxed will to survive. I thought I was going into shock as I heard the voice in my head and felt it mentally push me back into a POV position.
We will survive. Let us fight.
As this thought forced its way into my head and I began to lose my grip on my own body, I saw the first one charge. I watched my rifle twitch in its direction, sights settling on its chest as I triggered off a round of buckshot that tore through the man's chest and splattered his comrades with gore. Then the flood began. There were targets coming from every direction. Ones that got behind me never seemed to slip my attention, and I would smoothly pivot around and execute them before they got too close to do any damage. I was a one-man whirlwind of death and never-ending destruction. The reloads were seamless, with a new mag in the receiver and a round chambered and ready to be expelled before the old mag ever hit the ground. I wish I could say I was that amazing, but honestly, I was just a bystander in my own mind as I watched this happen, and I was oddly okay with it. Whatever was inside was in full control and keeping me alive, and very well I might add. The 1-minute mark on the QRF came over the radio as I seamlessly transitioned to my sidearm due to the last empty mag chambering empty on my rifle. I kept firing as I felt a massive explosion rip the huge door from its mountings behind me. Seconds later, I heard the volume of gunfire increase and rounds ripping through the air around me as my avenging angels arrived behind me. I saw Duncan and the most seasoned balancer, Michael, putting on a phenomenal class in close quarters battle as they closed in behind me, and I slowly backed up towards them. The other two were firing from defensive positions around the chopper and clearing the area surrounding us for clear exit to the chopper. Duncan would later tell me that I had the black starry eyes burning bright and a maniacal grin on my face the entire time, and never once stopped fighting or acknowledged their hails to retreat until my final mag was emptied into the never-ending sea of bodies. As I split back and hauled ass for the awaiting chopper, I felt both the other seasoned operators break fire and follow my fleeing form. We were home free, and while it may not have been the cleanest mission, it was still successful. I'd acquired intel on something extremely serious and dangerous. I was only a few yards from the chopper when I stumbled. I was suddenly thrust to the forefront of my mind, and it took me a second to gain my bearings. It was all they needed. I felt myself being pushed from behind as Duncan sailed past me into the awaiting chopper. He took up residence in the door as Brian and Alex, the other two balancers, made way for the rest of the gang. That left Mike behind me, pushing me and practically throwing me into Duncan's awaiting arms. I turned around and offered a hand to Mike. It never came. I saw Mike collapse and a dagger was protruding from his neck. I felt a vengeful wave of black anger roll over me as I pulled my karambits and leapt from the safety of the chopper, practically severing the head from the offending goon who had mortally wounded my brother in arms. I knew Mike was dying and I would be unable to save him. That, and the encroaching army, was not going to stop me from taking him home. I bellowed at the top of my lungs and from the bottom of my soul. It was a sound that stopped these people in their tracks, and even caused a gasp from Sam over the radio as I stood over my fallen brother with blood on my knife-filled hands. I unceremoniously threw his body over my shoulder and dove back into the chopper as the horde once again found their bloodlust and made their way towards us. We lifted off as I held Mike's dying form in my arms. I will never forget weeping as I held him. A man I barely knew, but who gave everything to protect me. I vowed to him that I would never let anyone die for me again. He smiled at me, the purest and most unrequited happiness taking over as he passed. A single thought passed through my head.
Never go back on that promise. Take care of this team, kid.
Then he was gone. I held him for the entire flight, never releasing him until I stumbled from the chopper. Utterly spent and unable to take another step on my own, Brian and Alex grabbed his body from me with a silent nod, while Sam, who had met us on the tarmac, grabbed one of my arms and Duncan grabbed the other. Dragging my rapidly fading body inside, I heard Duncan say, "We heard what you said, mate. No one dies, never again." I began to weep anew as I felt myself being laid down in the infirmary. "You just better remember what Mike told you. Never go back on that promise." I know now, Mike was telepathic. Unable to speak and dying, that glorious man left me with one final request. To this day, I refuse to fail a man I never knew but in passing. A man I will forever hold dear in my heart and hold to the highest light. Have fun in Valhalla, brother. That is how, as a team, through the loss of a brother, the Balancers became one.